When can a narcissist become their most dangerous? Now, I make a lot of videos around emotional and manipulative behaviour, and personally, just using the term narcissist is quite vague. I like to separate those down into 6 emotional manipulative behaviours, which I teach about. But if we're going to go on the angle of a narcissist, which is a person who is struggling with their self-esteem, their self-worth, they are completely consumed on their perspective of the world because they are so overwhelmed, and they may try to control everything around them, including everybody else around them, depending on how insecure they feel. Obviously, being around a person like that can be overwhelming, to say the least. Now, the reason, again, I don't just use the term narcissist is because in my training I use 6 emotional manipulative behaviours, and each one of those 6 emotional manipulative behaviours will rely on a specific emotional vulnerability in their target. One relies on guilt, the other relies on helplessness, another relies on abandonment issues, another relies on shame, another relies on that feeling of not fitting in or not being part of the group, and another relies on absolute terror and a fear of loss. There's more in that, and I'll put a link in the description below to explain all of those 6 emotional manipulative behaviours, because it really is important to transcend beyond just calling somebody a narcissist or a gaslighter. But back to the question, when, if we are using this term narcissist, when a person is consumed with themselves, using controlling behaviour to control situations around them, including other people, when can they become their most dangerous? And they can become extremely dangerous. And I'm going to give you an analogy here of a person I was working with once who actually taught self-defense and martial arts classes. And they were saying that the most dangerous person that you could ever meet is somebody who has nothing to lose. Now, if we take that back to when can a narcissist become their most dangerous, is a person, irrespective of how much money they've got, or how much power they've got, the looks, or whatever it may be. If we talk about this on a purely emotional level, a person might feel crippling guilt about that they're not good enough, or shame. A person might feel that they are just not good enough, that nobody really wants to know them, that they are worthless in society. It doesn't mean they are. It means that that's what they believe they are. And beliefs are not necessarily fact. They are just what people believe is a fact. The content or information in these videos is for educational and informational purposes only. So if we take a person who is incredibly shut down, they've got low self-esteem, low self-worth, and they are using emotional manipulative behaviour as a mask to cover up their very low self-worth and very low self-esteem, fear of abandonment, whatever it may be. So if we take this as a setup, we've got person A and person B. Person B will be classed in this sense as the narcissist who's using emotional manipulative behaviour, is because they've got low self-esteem, they've got low self-worth, they're using a mask of control, so they feel secure behind that mask. So then, if we take person A, who could also be using emotional manipulative behaviour, and imagine that they're quicker than person B, and imagine that person A manipulates person B to crush their mask, or to remove their mask, or to expose their vulnerabilities behind their mask. So in essence, person B has got no mask of protection. They are totally exposed. And if you imagine that was in, say, a group setting, or in front of friends, or in front of their partner, so then person B, without their mask, is exposed to their greatest trauma, their greatest vulnerability. And in their mind, in their trauma, it could be that they are totally vulnerable, totally afraid, totally helpless, and everybody could be, for example, in their mind, laughing at them, putting them down. And they could be, in essence, reliving that trauma because person A has exposed person B's vulnerability by removing person B's mask. Now, if we take that back, the most dangerous person is a person with nothing to lose. So if we take, for example, in the 6 emotional manipulative behaviours, if a person, what I call the oppressed victim emotional manipulative behaviour, which is very different than a person who's a victim of trauma, by the way, but if a person's using the oppressed victim, they'll use guilt. And that could be that nobody's there for them, everybody's letting them down. Now, person A could destroy that mask, leaving that person completely vulnerable, because now they've got no guilt trip to use on other people. They'll feel totally exposed. And in that moment there, person B might start to use everything that they can find to protect themselves with, even if that means being physical or emotionally abusive or attacking or throwing out secrets that they should not really be sharing with that group. And the reason that's happened is because person B now feels totally exposed, totally vulnerable, because their mask is being removed by person A. Now, I work specifically with trauma recovery and emotionally manipulative behaviour, and the one thing I always say to people is that sometimes we can see online of these so-called savage comebacks and how to crush the narcissist with 10 top tips or whatever it might be. But one thing that we have to understand here is that the reason people are using emotional manipulative behaviour is because they're vulnerable underneath. They're overwhelmed. And yes, although their behaviour might be wrong and it might be abusive, by putting them down or removing the mask is just going to exacerbate the problem. And don't get me wrong here, if somebody's got bad behaviour and abusive behaviour, that needs to be addressed. But following these online tactics of the savage comebacks or the 10 top tips to crush the narcissist, if you're using that technique without realising it, you might find that a situation might go from 1 to 10 in a matter of seconds, leaving you completely spun out. Because one thing to take into account here is that if we don't really know a person, we do not know how they might react if their mask is suddenly taken away. They might just feel very uncomfortable and leave the room quietly, or they might go into a blind rage and start attacking people all around them. We don't know. And although for some people they might feel really triumphant seeing that person go into a blind rage because they've got one over on the narcissist, all it's going to do is create conflict. And I remember a wonderful quote from the film King Arthur by Guy Ritchie, and the quote was, "Why have enemies when you can have friends?" And also as well, it might not be that they take it out there and then on the person. It might be that they take it out on somebody else, say for example in their home. So in summary to this, when will the narcissist become their most dangerous? When they feel exposed and vulnerable because their mask has been taken away. All of these 10 top tips to do savage comebacks and stop the gaslighter and rip the narcissist to pieces, all of that, all it's said by is vulnerable people who are angry with the world, and all they're doing is causing conflict. Yes, if a person's got abusive behaviour, that needs to be addressed. But by attacking somebody when they're vulnerable is just going to make everything 10 times worse. Why have enemies when you can have friends? So if you've got anything to share on this, or any thoughts, reflections or ideas, feel free to put them in the comments below, because you never know, your comment might change somebody else's life for the better forever.